Thank you, Wells. Good morning. Welcome to Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church in Pasadena. Welcome to all members, friends, and guests. Neighborhood Church creates and grows an inclusive community of faith connected by love, spirit, and service. My name is Taylor Chazen, and I am proud to serve as a member of our Board of Trustees. Today's service is led by me. Reverend Dr. Teresa Cooley is unfortunately homesick, but she will be appearing virtually later on. Soloist Christy Lynn Lawrence, accompanist Wells Ling, and guest musician Lorian Brightbill. Please take a moment to silence your devices as we begin our service. There are many ways to connect with our church community throughout the week, both in person and virtually. Whether you're new or ready to find new ways to engage, please visit our website and social media to learn more. The 8th Principle Steering Committee is wanting to hear from you. Please fill out the 8th Principle survey that you can find in our newsletter or our Facebook page. It only takes a few minutes and is so helpful to us to know where the congregation stands on affirming and adopting the 8th Principle here at Neighborhood. Neighborhood Church upholds a covenant of right relations through which we commit to act so that the needs of the individual and the greater faith community can be in harmony. Today, I'd like to highlight the part that says, "We hereby covenant to give to one another and our institution. We contribute our time, skills, and other resources." Speaking of resources, our annual pledge drive is when each of us commits to give financially to Neighborhood in the next church year, which begins June 1st. We're over 70% of the way toward our goal, which is amazing. But we haven't heard from 150 households. If that includes you, the time for responding is now. We're working on our budget for next year. Some big decisions depend on our pledge results. Stop by the table outside to check your status, ask any questions, and add your voice to the groundswell of support for this faith community. A big thank you to all the organizers, donors, and bidders who made Dining for Dollars a stunning success. After our bid day on March 27th, we only have 6 items with open spots left. Today is your chance to place a bid for one of those spots. The Dining for Dollars and More folks will be on the patio after the service. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. The search committee selection team would like to report that as of Thursday, when their applications closed, they had received 18 applications to fill the 7 seats on the search committee. That's an amazing show. Interviews of all applicants will now be conducted, and a final slate of candidates will be selected and announced by the end of the month. The selection team thanks all who applied, considered applying, or encouraged others to apply. We are humbled by the generosity and commitment of our congregation, demonstrated by having so many terrific people apply for this committee. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, welcome to Neighborhood Church, whoever you are and wherever you are in your spiritual journey. Welcome to this inclusive faith community connected by love, spirit, and service. And I'd like to welcome Anna Villanova.
Good morning. We're some of the Villeneuves. I'm Anna, Louisa, Jacob Villeneuve, and I'm here to talk to you about pledging. I was so excited. I wore a button-down shirt today, and I even had to iron it, so I'm very proud of myself for that. About 18 years ago, Louisa moved to California, and at that point, she was a graduate student, and I had already been a member here. I was already a pledging member. I grew up in a Methodist church, and it was part of our family values to pledge to the church. So we looked at our budget, and I don't know if you remember our yellow sheets of paper where we totaled everything up, and we did the whole, I have a full-time job, so I'll take this percentage, and here's your percentage of the school stipend. And it wasn't, we always have talked about money very openly and supported the church. So I had lunch with Madeline, our daughter, this week, and I said, we're giving this talk. Why do we support the church financially? And she said, Mommy told me once, ask her. So we had a conversation about why this is part of our budget, that when we go through our monthly, the things that we pay monthly, this is always something that's on the list. And Louise was talking about our values and this being a place that shares our values and celebrates our values. We're out in Glendora, which is a much more conservative place and doesn't have families that look like ours, and we want to raise our family in a place where they can look around and feel like they are part of a community. When she first came to neighborhood, she said, "Everyone here is gay. I saw their name tags. They've all got rainbows." We're all supportive. So we are giving to the church because the church amplifies our voice. We know that when we donate to the church, the message that we hold in our hearts about wanting to be committed to change is something that the church community supports. So when Elizabeth Sandlin sent out the message saying we'd like everyone to raise their pledge by 11%, we were there. We want to get the best minister to come in, and we know that money talks there too. Our money talks in terms of values, and our money says, come and help us achieve the goals that we want to achieve. And then we were thinking about it more when we were looking at that total that the church is aiming for this year, and we thought about our privilege. I've had my full-time job for more than 20 years now, and Louisa has the exciting opportunity of starting her full-time career right now. And I said, this feels like a time for us to share that momentous gain in our family. Can we raise another 11% on your job? And she agreed that that was something that was important to us. The kids are a little shocked by that, but I think they'll understand later. So thank you for your time. We'll tell you, explain our financial contribution. So thank you for being a part of our family.
Now begins the part where you imagine me as Reverend Dr. Teresa Cooley. Today's invocation is by Angela Herrera. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards, and the world needs vision. Bring them with you, and your joy and your passion. Bring your loving and your courage and your conviction. Bring your need for healing and your power to heal. There is work to do, and you have all that you need to do it right here in this room. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. Please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our gathering hymn, number 82, This Land of Bursting Sunrise.
Can I have all of the children and youth to the front for a story for all ages, please? Hello, hello, welcome. So this is a little early, our Earth Day service today. So this is the time of the year when you use especially turn toward loving the earth and doing all we can to help nature and all its wonders. Our book this morning is appropriately entitled Earth, My First 4.54 Billion Years. Sort of a memoir for kids. So we have planet Earth here. And Earth says, "Hi, my name is Earth. Some people call me Gaia, the world, or the third planet from the sun, the blue marble, but you can call me Planet Awesome." Now you know it's going to be a good book, right? Yeah, Planet Awesome. My family is really, really big. There's Earth with all the other planets, and Pluto kind of off on the side there, right? Because we don't talk about Pluto. Yeah. I have 7 siblings in my solar system. I'm closest to Venus and Mars. Some used to say I have 8 siblings, but Pluto is more like a family pet. Yeah, see. Yeah, and then there are my cousins. My Milky Way family has billions of planets. Told you, big family. My favorite things to do are spinning. It takes me a whole day to go around once. And circling the sun. That takes me an entire year. Yeah, pretty cool. My best friend is the moon. We hang out all the time, even when you can't see her. The moon needs 27 days, 7 hours, 43 minutes, and 12 seconds to go around me. I've timed her. I was born 4.5 billion years ago. I don't remember what it was like to be a baby. Who does? But I've been told I was a hot mess. Explosive, gassy, very cranky. There's a picture of baby Earth there, very red. It rained for thousands of years. Then I started to cool off and things, like I said, got really wet. I'm not kidding. It rained for literally thousands of years. I was soggy and lonely. A few islands popped up in my oceans, but no plants or animals yet. My islands must have been lonely too. They got together and made bigger islands called continents. There's Pangaea. I remember Ur and Nuna and the ginormous Pangaea. Then Pangaea split into 7 separate continents. Things are always changing. As I got older, stuff began to grow. Life. So there's 4.54 billion years ago, I arrived, all the way to now. And we have a whole timeline of first plants, then insects, then dinosaurs, then mammals, birds, and finally, 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens. You humans have big brains and walk on 2 feet. And there's a human saying, "Hi." We are very excited to be here. The time of the dinosaurs was one of my favorites. I mean, everyone loves dinosaurs. They lived with me for 175 million years until, wait for it, asteroid. Big asteroid. It's not always easy being Earth. Volcanic eruptions, ice ages, major collisions. But on the inside, I'm the same planet awesome. You see the crust and the inner core and the outer core and the mantle. Humans have been super fun. No other species has ever been interested in learning about me like humans do. Other animals are nice, but they mostly just eat and poop and never wonder about how amazing life is. But sometimes humans forget to share and play nice and clean up after themselves. Yeah. Still, I bet you humans will turn out to do really great things, right? Yeah. And there's a bunch of humans like us. And it says, "We love you, Earth." Can we get a round of applause for the Earth, please? The end. So that's our Earth, and we need to take care of Earth, don't we? Yeah. All right, I think it's time for us to head off to our youth religious education classes.
Neighborhood Share the Plate program contributes to not-for-profit 501c3 organizations in the greater Pasadena community that advance the church's social justice mission. This week, we are dedicating the offering to neighborhood's own social justice projects. Some examples of these projects include the Neighborhood People of Color Group, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, the Building Bridges Task Force, and the 8th Principal Steering Committee. While some of our social justice activities have been on hold during the pandemic, we know as we progress further into in-person services, we will also look forward to more internal social justice activities. You can give through our website, text to give, or using the QR code or box available at the exit. If you wish to make a payment toward your pledge, make a note in the subject line or use an envelope available at the box outside. Please give generously. Thank you. Please join me in the spirit of prayer, of reflection, of meditation. Let us ground our bodies in the good earth and open our spirits to hope as we share this poem from Jan Richardson. Hope nonetheless, hope despite, hope regardless, hope still. Hope where we had ceased to hope, hope amid what threatens hope. Hope with those who feed our hope, hope beyond what we had hoped. Hope that draws us past our limits, hope that defies expectations. Hope that questions what we have known, hope that makes a way where there is none. Hope that takes us past our fear, hope that calls us into life. Hope that holds us beyond death, hope that blesses those to come. For our reading this morning, we will listen to a video created by Leah Rubin Cadrain. Leah grew up in the Hartford Unitarian Church that Reverend Teresa once served. She actually used to babysit our membership and communications coordinator, Ginger Fury. She now lives in the LA area after living most of her life on the East Coast. She recently reflected on the experience of moving to a dramatically different environment in an article in Audubon magazine, and Reverend Teresa thought it would be great for you to hear it directly from her.
I'm Leah Rubin Cadrain here in Kenneth Hahn State Park, where I come to weed and replant the land every week with a small group of volunteers. This is a patch of earth we now call Eleanor's Patch, and behind me is a California black walnut tree we planted for Eleanor. I'm going to tell you more about her in this essay I wrote for the Audubon Society. It was sometime during the pandemic that I realized I didn't have a home. I'd lived in Los Angeles for 4 years as an East Coast transplant and prided myself on being an outsider. I liked pine needles and protected dunes, not volleyball and Ferris wheels. I liked the melancholy winter blue hour and books that weren't beach reads. I liked the camaraderie of the subway and my friends who'd known me for decades. But when the mandate came to shelter in place, this place was where I was, and I was still a stranger here. I was also struggling with my fertility, an endless journey through surgeries and private loss, which only reinforced my isolation. After hundreds of visits, I still used Google Maps to get home from the doctor's office, refusing to learn the way. I felt invisible as I drove, like a seed pod that might flutter into an eddy and disappear. Everywhere I went, I saw the signs of the apocalypse. The city's dusty trails and seemingly dead brush were not only unlovely, but alarming. It hadn't rained enough in California in years, and yet sprinklers ran all summer, and the city kept washing its gleaming cars. Meanwhile, the president was dismantling climate policies and environmental protections at a harrowing clip. But as I hunkered down, I started noticing I had company. A California towhee wanted to chat on my deck, and every morning the yellow flash of a hooded oriole preening in the passion fruit vines caught my eye. I was thrilled when shadows large as dragons came through the yard, outriders of high-flying red-tailed hawks. As these birds became my friends, I understood how lonely I had been. In a surge of commitment, I signed up for a program called California Naturalist. Its name brought to mind a Stetson hat, which appealed to me. I'd always nursed a pipe dream of being a national park ranger, not least for the uniform. I logged into a Zoom classroom and for more than 40 hours learned about where I lived. I learned to keep a field notebook, to notice caterpillars in the leaf litter, and about why eucalyptus groves were so quiet. I studied my local watersheds and the adaptations of redwoods to fire. I collected live oak acorns in my cup holder. I logged observations on iNaturalist, an app for identifying and mapping biodiversity, staking digital pins throughout my neighborhood. To complete the course, I had to present a capstone project involving hands-on volunteer work promoting stewardship. I knew where I wanted to work, Kenneth Hahn State Recreation Area, an urban park a short walk from my house. It was partly wild and untamed. Once I'd had to pull my dog away from a coyote on the trail. But much of it looked ugly, gray, and barren. Litter marred the views and oil derricks bobbed in the lot next door, glaring reminders of the land's abuse. I needed a sponsor for my project, so I Googled the park and volunteer. I found an article on the blog of the Los Angeles Audubon Society co-written by Eleanor Osgood, a stalwart chapter member. An email led to a phone call, and soon, one fall morning in 2020, we stood at the entrance to Kenneth Hahn. Eleanor was small-boned, with a cowlicked silver bowl cut and a car trunk full of trowels. She worked with a small oxygen tank on her back, but with a dauntless vigor. I'd never seen her in the park, and I understood why once she led me to her site. She worked away from public paths through a tunnel in the coyote brush, in a place not for people, but for birds. She had company, a ragtag volunteer crew who'd been battling weeds for years. Among them were Alan, an avid hiker and gardener, George, a retired science teacher, and Tian, a visiting professor from China. Every Friday, bearing masks and rusty tools, our team assembled. This year's nemesis was invasive black mustard, which was turning the coastal sage scrub into an ashen monoculture. I'd liked mustard when I'd seen it spraying hillsides yellow in spring, but come summer it gave way to a sea of brittle gray, tempting wildfire and blighting the landscape. Moreover, mustard outcompeted native plants, which by contrast supported a vast network of species that had co-evolved together. Some, like monarch butterflies, depended on a single host plant for survival. When one plant disappears engulfed by mustard, so do insects that feed on it, and up the food chain. We snapped the dead mustard, often taller than us, down into twigs. Stem by stem, we dug under the root node, from which it could resprout, and severed it there. The dead stalks scattered tiny living seeds, which we raked to remove. After a rain, we scraped up new mustard seedlings, a carpet of green dots. There were always more, and the work was maddeningly slow. Now I started seeing mustard everywhere. In a park of 400 mustard-strewn acres, our site measured 1 acre. A restoration ecologist told the Los Angeles Times that mustard was so widespread, it didn't meet the criteria for a species that is manageable on a large scale. In other words, our efforts were futile. Despairing, I confronted Eleanor. "How can you stand it?" I asked. "How can you work this tiny patch of earth while mustard swallows the globe?" Eleanor did not flinch. Patiently, she reminded me that by working the land every week for years, we gradually deplete the mustard seed bank. When we reseed with native plants, we give them a head start before the rainy season and water them extra. They have a chance to grow into a habitat. What matters here, she said, is that birds passing down from the mountains have a soft place to land. For them, she concluded, we build a corridor. We build a corridor. Her words cracked light into my soul. We can't eradicate mustard everywhere. No more than any individual can, on their own, stop the drilling or halt ponderosa pines from retreating up the mountains. We can't make it rain. But we can look down and weed the earth at our feet. We can clear a narrow path step by step. And one day we'll look up and see we've built a corridor. Eleanor died last year. In April 2021, she texted me from the hospital. All of us together might actually conquer the mustard by the end of spring. But come summer, she was gone. I miss her optimism, her fearlessness, and the way she cocked her head to hear the birds. But her words still root me and have helped me find my stake in this land. Still, every week I work her acre with my new weeding friends. My fingernails are black with soil, but a native coastal golden bush has taken root. Native wildflowers, California everlasting, cliff aster, wire lettuce, and clustered tarweed are making a bid. At dusk, the light settles pink against the mountain's flanks, and I know the length and angle of the shadows at this time in this season. And I know that in the folds, the dark purple creases where evening falls first, birds are bedding down, and that tomorrow they might rest here.
Good afternoon, Neighborhood Church. My name is Peter Eisenhart. I lead the church's 7th Principle Committee. Our 7th principle is respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. We are the church's Environmental Committee, and we've been focusing on climate change because the facts of climate change are grim. And some people have called this the human asteroid, thinking about Matt's story earlier. Human activities have raised carbon dioxide levels by 50%. Global temperatures have risen by almost 2 degrees. The top mile of the entire ocean has warmed by almost a degree in water that has become 30% more acidic. And in Greenland and Antarctica, over 400 billion tons of ice have melted. These trends, driven by the Industrial Revolution, by our age-old quest for fire, are accelerating, and today disastrous signs of the climate crisis are all around us. Temperatures this past week in Southern California were 15 to 20 degrees above normal. The 2020 California wildfire season was the worst in the state's history, and to some of us, this wildfire season last summer seemed even worse. And in Portland, Oregon, temperatures climbed to 116 degrees in Oregon. The Sierra snowpack this year is at 38% of normal. We are in a severe drought. Sea levels along the U.S. coastline are projected to rise by almost a foot by 2050. It feels like the not so slow motion end of the world. But we cannot abandon responsibility, not when the U.S. has been by far the biggest cumulative emitter of carbon dioxide in history. And though we should be worried, though we should be worried, we are not powerless. Our institutions respond to what we want, to what we're worried about. The fraction of Americans who are alarmed or concerned about climate change is now almost 60%. We're finally waking up. And because of this, action on climate change is happening all around us. These are reasons to hope. Here's some recent examples. At the Glasgow International Conference on Climate Change in November, the world agreed to phase down the use of coal and to phase out fossil fuel subsidies, and the Biden administration committed the U.S. to net zero by 2050. At the beginning of January, California began statewide composting. In late January, the Los Angeles City Council voted to ban new oil and gas wells in the city and to phase out existing wells. In February, the LA Unified School District approved the development of a comprehensive climate literacy program. In March, the Securities and Exchange Commission proposed a rule requiring mandatory climate disclosure from all public U.S. companies. This past Monday, the Pasadena City Council endorsed an ordinance requiring new commercial and multi-unit residential construction to be all electric so that they won't have fossil fuel gas connections. Just this past Wednesday, the Los Angeles City Council voted to electrify the entire city fleet. There is a bandwagon forming. We need to jump on. As Bill McKibben says, climate change is the single biggest thing that humans have ever done on this planet. The one thing that needs to be bigger is our movement to stop it. Now, many of us care about environmental issues besides climate change, and let me close by mentioning a couple of other examples. Thanks to my son Luke's efforts, a major paving project in Olancha, California, has switched to a cleaner way to make asphalt, and that's reducing the risk of cancer 25 times. And finally, if you like big cats, I like cats, and if you like corridors, the groundbreaking ceremony for the wildlife corridor over the Santa Monica Freeway, the 101, that will be on April 22nd. These actions only happen because of the efforts of alarmed and concerned people. Of Americans who are alarmed, almost half want to take action, but no one has asked them. So today, we're asking, what do you care about? What action do you want to take? Come talk to us. Well, apologies. Talk to Peggy, sitting there in the middle. I have to go play in a concert this afternoon. come talk to Peggy at the table on the patio after the service. Thank you.
Number 1001 in your teal hymnal.
I'm sorry I can't be there in person this morning, but you can probably tell that you do not want to be in physical proximity to my head cold. I'm grateful that we have learned to use these technologies to allow us to pivot at the last minute, and I'm especially grateful, as always, to the tech team for their ability to make things work. Today is Palm Sunday. This is meant to commemorate the triumphant entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. After years of wandering through the countryside gathering followers, he decides to bring his message of radical love to Jerusalem. He enters the city on a donkey, a symbol of his humility, with thousands of people who have been captivated by his vision of a new Jerusalem. They sweep palms before him to help clean the way forward. I have visited Jerusalem a few years ago, and now I can really picture what it must have been like for him to enter those narrow alleyways full of merchants hawking their wares. He was not there to sell something. He was there to teach something new, a revolution of the heart, not a political revolution. His anger at the money changers in the temple was not about economics. It was about keeping the sacred separate from the profane. This thrilled his followers who hated the Roman desecration of their sacred places, but he was also delivering a message to the Jewish leaders as well. None of this made him popular with the powers that be. As the radical nature of his message became clear, the authorities started to clamp down on him. And when the people saw this resistance, they began to grow afraid and started to fall by the wayside. Some even turned on him and betrayed him to the authorities, even his most loyal followers. I imagine that they were looking for another miracle from him. But I think Jesus was done with miracles. He wanted people to understand that the power is within each person, not with charismatic leaders. So he was crucified, and his followers slunk away in fear and disappointment. I sometimes ask myself, what if they had stayed? How would this story be different if his followers had started to understand that everyone has the power to change things? Because don't we still struggle with that today? As much as we understand ourselves as a democratic people, there's still an impulse to wait for someone else to fix things. Why can't Joe Biden lower the price of gas, etc.? And there is so much to be fixed. When I was in Arlington, I did one of my question box sermons in which the congregation can give me questions to reflect on in that moment. And one of the questions I received was from a 9-year-old boy sitting in the back of the sanctuary. He wrote on a card, "Why don't you adults care about the planet that we have to live in?" It's a legitimate question. And I think part of the answer isn't that we don't care, it's that we feel such powerlessness and despair. Is composting all of my food waste really going to change the planet? But I'm starting to see that despair as really a cop-out, a stubborn refusal to take responsibility whenever and wherever we can. Peter shared some stories about progress that we have actually made to try to counteract that despair. As an article in the New York Times recently reflected, we really are making some progress in averting the climate crisis. Not to the degree that we need to, but things have been changing for the better. I'll give you just a few more examples. Thanks to the Endangered Species Act, the nearly extinct population of sea turtles has increased by 980%. In Rome, you can pay for a subway ticket with a plastic bottle. Thus far, 350,000 plastic bottles have been collected. And NASA satellites record that the world is actually greener than it was 20 years ago. I could go on, and it does help to go on in this vein. But what I've noticed about all of these examples that Peter shared and I've shared is that they're neither about just individual action or just collective action. They are both. We can't make the necessary changes alone, but to make the necessary changes, we all need to participate, to not turn away in despair. Leah was inspired to find a new kind of beauty in her new environment due to the inspiration of her mentor, but also by actively participating in a collective effort to reclaim the trail. Eric Fromm wrote, "Only through full awareness of the danger to life can this potential be mobilized for action capable of bringing about drastic changes in our ways of organizing society. One cannot think in terms of percentages or probabilities as long as there is a real possibility, even a slight one, that life will prevail." That is the paradox. Awareness of danger can actually mobilize to action. We all probably know this at some level, but that's what we come to church for, right? To be mobilized, to be encouraged and inspired to bring about a different kind of life here on earth. I will continue to compost my food, knowing that our collective efforts to do so helps minimize methane gas. You can join Leah on that trail to help bring it back to its original condition. We all have that power within us. Jesus was trying to convey that the power is within us, both spiritual and earthly. To find that hope within us that Jan Richardson talks about in our prayer this morning is how we join together. Hope that takes us past our fear, hope that calls us into life, hope that holds us beyond death, hope that blesses those to come. So may we live and find our being. Amen.
Join in singing our closing hymn, number 81 in your gray hymnal, The Wordless Mountains Bravely Still.
Our benediction today is from Laura Martin. Remember that the world is saved by small things, mustard seeds, pieces of light tangled through trees and windows, enough. Words given to you years ago that find you again in your kitchen when you are doubting your way. The world is saved by people who take ordinary things and use them for the good. Your life is saved by the way you remember that grace can be so small. You can trip over her if you aren't paying attention. Look again and see.